So, good evening, good morning, everybody. This is Kiara Windrider from the Conscious Awakening Network. I'm the host for Age of Gaia every Sunday evening, 7:30 p.m. Mountain Time. So, what I would like to do from today onwards is record a series based on the first of my trilogy, Issa, Son of the Sun. So what I would be doing every Sunday is just reading a couple of chapters from this book or the series of books. And just to say as an introduction, it's an archetypal story. So outwardly, it's a story of Isa, Jesus, his travels and experiences in India and the East. But it's also the story of each of us in our awakening journey. So, just like he said, the same things I can do, you can all do, and even more, because it's not about the journey of one man, but the journey of a collective as we come into awakening. And we are very, very close to this time of awakening now, where this story becomes incarnated through each of us. All right, so with that introduction, here we go. So, chapter 1, Miran's story. Memories flash across my field of vision. How could I forget the first time I laid my eyes on him at my parents' palace in Kashmir? The way he absently brushed his flaxen hair from his kind blue eyes and listened with genuine interest. I'd been a reclusive child then, a 14-year-old princess who hid in the gardens, communing with sparrows and chipmunks. There was something about him that made me feel protected. It wasn't long before he was talking with me about matters of the world and spirit I'd never considered. We didn't see each other again for many years. My next memory was sitting by a stream with our families, eating lunch in the sun. I was biting into a ripe apricot when a young doe burst from the forest and headed straight for his arms like a frightened pet. I was startled by it was startled by whatever was chasing her, breaking branches and pounding the ground behind a row of sycamore. When I turned back, Issa was bent close to the ground, holding the trembling doe to his chest, soothing it until the predator's scampering faded. I felt like that doe around Issa. I trusted him completely, and something about his presence soothed the anxiousness in me, even after I'd become a confident young woman, secure in my talents and purpose, even after we had become acquainted with each other, even after the soft springtime of a young girl's admiration had grown into a tender and mature love. How could I forget running through sunlit meadows of perfect color with them, or riding through our sacred mountain trails on horseback, or walking hand in hand through the rich tapestry of existence? Our tender love flushed like the purple blooms of saffron in an autumn field, the burnt golden stamens emitting a sweet fragrance that only deepened in moonlight. When he was away, our love was still there. It had simply gone dormant, strengthened like winter moons under the earth. We barely saw each other in those early years. Issa was often away, traveling with his teachers or disciples and caravans, healing those sick in body or mind, in the cities and villages where they camped. There were moments I felt a cold metallic dread in my heart as I watched him confront and overcome the constant dangers he met upon his path. There were foreign places I dreamed and felt so close I could almost touch the tough muslin cloth. Taste strange herbs on toasted meat, sense the cadence of a language I didn't know. And then his travels took him back to Palestine, the land of his birth. I watched in the mirror of my own soul how he struggled with the priests of his time, striving to carry the message of light to a hard-headed people. And I will never forget the day he was stretched to the limits of human endurance and almost died. I would have died that day too if my beloved teacher, Chanath, had not come to me, held me, and reassured me. But he came back then, and we eventually married. Although he was a prince by lineage, Issa had been on the road most of his life, unaccustomed to the trappings of the material world. We lived simply. We were equally at ease, sitting with each other in silence and sharing a simple meal of yak cheese and bread, as we were exploring the deepest mysteries of life and the mastery of divine consciousness. There are memories of sitting by mountain streams in deep meditation, times we spent with our illustrious teacher, Chanath, or Babaji, as we called him. There are memories of children we raised and a kingdom we ruled. There are times we could be alone, and times we were busy with the constant duties and demands of daily life, and with the circle of disciples that eventually gathered around us. There was much time we spent together, learning of each other, becoming one body and soul, communing without the need for words or even physical presence. A single consciousness moving through two vibrantly attuned hearts. Most recently now, as my scribe commits these memories to paper, there is a fresh and glorious imprint of accompanying my beloved Issa in my own subtle bodies as he completed the task he had been chosen for, merging his physical body with light and seeding all existence with new evolutionary potential. Often it is only at the end of all things, when the strands of a great and glorious web have come together in perfection, that the heart of a story can be revealed. And so the story begins with the Kashmiri princess, Miran, looking out in the early morning dawn towards a chariot of light being raised towards the heavens, face aglow with a flaming radiance, heart bursting with gratitude and love for all the years she was allowed to share with this most magnificent of men. Whereas another woman might have felt sadness of this departure, this was not so for Miran, for had not her entire life moved her unerringly in service to the same great work, the same sublime of destinies? Where could he depart that she was not also there with him? Of course, the story chronologically begins much earlier, perhaps 100 years ago or more, at the turning of an age. There are mysteries that few understand, and there are many who have deliberately attempted to distort and deny the truth of these times because of the power contained in these mysteries. But distortions don't last forever. And in every age, there comes a time when truth is revealed at last, and this truth has the power to set men free. Perhaps the time has come now for the full story to be revealed, and we will start from the beginning of things. Chapter 2, Amita-praba. The villagers of Bethlehem watched with curiosity as a dusty band of travelers came in through the gate. A young woman was among them, pregnant, supported by her husband and her retinue. Her face was peeling and burnt from the sun, but she carried herself with dignity as a servant helped her down. They had chosen their guides wisely. Nobody in the caravan was dehydrated. They knew where to find adequate water springs. The camels and donkeys appeared well fed, though burdened with baskets and sacks. They had met with neither wild beasts nor marauders, and no one was hurt. Later that night, sitting around a fire in front of their lodgings, they ruminated on the mysterious events that brought them here. They had come from Kashmir, that opulent valley sandwiched between Persia and Tibet, where fruits and flowers grew in profusion and fields of saffron covered the land. The young woman belonged to a tribe known as the Tukharas, who claimed descent from Tukharistan in the Russian steppes, and was also a descendant of King Dawood. She was a princess in the distant Himalayas, known there as Amita-praba, daughter of King Balavarman of Kamarupa. Her husband was Meghavahana, king of Kash, on the shores of the Dal Lake in Kashmir, and brother to King Gandaphoras of Gandhara. Amita-praba was her royal title, but she was known among her people as Mariam, while Meghavahana was commonly known as Yusuf. She ruminated on the wondrous events that had led her to this moment in time. Almost 9 months ago, she had experienced a dream, or was it really a dream? When she had been taken up into the skies and had great and profound experiences among a race of people known as the Devas, or Shining Ones, whom the Persians knew as the angels. She could feel the being who was with her rather than see him. He called himself Gabriel. While he was with her, it was as if thousands of butterfly wings pulsed inside her. Gabriel showed her things, revelations of unbearable beauty, perspective on the earth that stretched out to eternity, like the long desert roads she would later travel. Time no longer existed, and there was a wideness to space that was dizzying and exhilarating. She lost her balance and fell into it. By the time Mariam woke up, she had already forgotten most of what she had seen, but that inexplicable peace permeated her heart. She knew she was pregnant. And then, in her dream, she once again met the angels. "Do not fear," they told her. "You will be with child, but one who is destined to be a great leader. All is well." Reluctantly, for she was not sure what to make of these dreams, the young Amrita shared these dreams with her mother, Anna. Her mother knew the signs and confirmed that her daughter indeed was in the early stages of pregnancy. The angels came back often, and they were comforting presents to the beautiful young princess. "You are of the line of Dawood. Your child will be a son, and he is destined to be both a prophet and a king." As Amrita learned to communicate with them in her dreams, Their chariots, or vimanas, would often show up in the skies above them. One day, she and her mother were told that they would need to journey far to the west before she could give birth. But the child's task would be to gather together the sheep who had been lost and bring them back into the fold. The shining ones would lead them, they were told. Meanwhile, Meghavahana received the same message from a matted-haired yogi who had suddenly shown up in his chambers. He was told that the child to be born would be in the lineage of the Bodhisattva, and that they must be born in the land of his ancestors to the west. He was a good and kindly king, open to the mysteries of the spiritual world, and accepted this without question. And so, leaving the chief minister in charge of their kingdom, Yusuf and Miriam, along with a retinue of servants, had undertaken a long and arduous journey across the old Silk Road, across the lands of Gandhara, Persia, and Syria, finally reaching the land of Palestine, where their ancestors had once lived. This yogi with the matted hair, Yusuf looked inquiringly at Mariam in the evening light. He spoke of a place we would recognize when we get there. Are you certain Bethlehem is this place? Mariam looked out to the bleating of sheep, the shepherds holding their staffs around patches of green, apricot and fig trees that reminded her of home. She felt peaceful here. I am certain this is the place, she said. And so, here in this little village, they settled in preparation for the great day. Chapter 3, The Search. Not far away, a party of oracles and lamas had been traveling for weeks, following the guidance they had been given. 5 long centuries had passed since the death of their master, Sakyamuni, Buddha, also known as the Illumined One. The oracle had told them of a tulku who would be born in the West. He would be a bodhisattva in the lineage of the Illumined one whom the prophecies referred to as the Mithya. They were to seek him out, discover his identity, and test him in the secret ways of their tradition. Along the way, they joined paths with Gaspar and Balthazar in Gandhara, and later with Prince Saraim in Persia, who had likewise been inspired to journey westwards. They followed the old Silk Road, which connected the nations of the East with the Roman territories of the West. Gaspar was known as King Gondopharos in the land of Gandhara, and Haramatheus in the lands up north. Balthazar was his nephew. Saraim, also known as Melchior, had likewise been informed by his court astrologers of a similar prophecy about one who was to come. This Mithya you seek is the same son of the sun we seek, he spoke in wonderment. As they continued onwards together along the Silk Road, a mysterious vehicle occasionally guided them onwards. It was cylindrical in shape, like a pillar, and it appeared to be on fire, made of similar stuff as the sun. It was the same sort of pillar that had guided their ancestor Musa into the valleys of Kashmir, which the Brahmins knew as vimanas, vehicles of living light. There were stories in the great epics of wars being fought in the skies and pillars of flame that extinguished entire civilizations. But the travelers sensed instinctively that these were higher beings guiding them, and that this pillar had a different purpose. It was a vehicle for the ones they knew as the Shining Ones, the Sons of Light. The pillar didn't appear often on their journeys, only during moments when they felt lost, or when they went long stretches between finding pools or springs to fill their jugs and skins with water, or when the wind turned the sand to glass-like shards that cut their skin. And then, one day, finally, they arrived at their destination. The mysterious pillar of love, of fire, had led them into the land of Palestine, hovering over a tiny hovel in a little village called Bethlehem. They set up camp just outside the village. Later that night, in front of the flickering fire, Gaspar sat with Balthazar and Melchior, along with the chief oracles of Tibet, to marvel at the mystery that had brought them to this place. Why would he reincarnate here in this land of barbarians? Wondered one of the young lamas. Who would teach him and train him in the path of Dhamma? Have you forgotten our ancestors? Inquired Gaspar. Our same people, the Beni Israel, who now live in the valleys of Gandhara and Kashmir, once settled these faraway lands. And before that, didn't we all come down from the northern steppes? We are one people, with a common tradition, even if our paths have become separated now. True, sighed his nephew, Balthazar, but why so far from home? It's time for a history lesson, young man. This too is home for us. Our histories tell us that there were originally 12 tribes that descended from our forefather, Yaqub, or Israel, as he became known. During the last days of King Sulaiman, responding to increasing oppression in the kingdom, 10 of the tribes split to form their own alliance and set up a kingdom north of the great river, Jordan. They continued to call themselves Israel and chose to be ruled by Jeroboam, while the other 2 tribes inhabited the region south of the Jordan, maintaining allegiance to the eldest son of King Suleiman, Rehoboam. They called themselves the Yehudis, after the tribe of Yehuda. The Yehudis and the Israelis did not get along. Pekah, one of the last kings of Israel, formed an alliance with Rezin of Syria to invade Palestine, land of the Yehudas. Ahaz of Palestine retaliated by paying the Assyrians to invade Israel. As Israel fell under the Assyrian yoke, the Assyrians deported large numbers of Yehudis out east and allowed the people of Samaria to take their place. The Yehudis and the Samarians developed a hatred for each other, which exists still. So where did the Yehudis go? Demanded Balthazar. We are the sons of these Yehudis, the Beni Israel, answered Gaspar with emphasis. We are those whom the Assyrians deported to the far valleys of Kashmir, which happens to be the land promised to Musa. Indeed, destiny works in strange ways, and we have lived here in these beautiful valleys all these generations now, joined by tribes from the north, such as the Drakaras and the Pishakas, the Sakyas and the Munis. The Hebrews and the Hindus have the same ancient origins, and we've assimilated the wisdom of the Buddha and those who preceded him as part of our own tradition as well. Indeed, Sakyamuni himself is descended from the house of Dawood as well as from the northern tribes, although few remember this now. So the Maitreya is to be born in the place of our origins. It seems so, answered Gaspar. Our prophecies tell us that he is to gather the tribes together, to bring all the Yehudis into the promised land, and to govern them with equality and justice. He is to be both prophet and king, in the tradition of King Dawood, and return us to our original unity. Chapter 4, Chaitanath. Meanwhile, in a lonely cave hidden in the Himalayan valleys of Kashmir, one of the greatest Nath yogis of all time, Chaitanath, sat in deep meditation. The Naths were a lineage of immortals, yogis who had experienced the power of divine consciousness, not only to experience the higher stages of unified consciousness, but also to bring this power of light into the density of matter, thereby immortalizing their bodies in accordance with the highest laws of creation. The Nath yogis were not concerned so much with individual lives and destinies, but with the larger evolutionary patterns of human civilization. They understood that history moves in stages and cycles, and that the time had come for initiating a new stage in the evolution of humanity, so that all men could begin to awaken to the powerful destiny that slumbered within them. Like the Nath lineage that came before him, he understood that the material universe was not really separate from the consciousness that imbued it, and that it was the task of a yogi to demonstrate his knowledge, this knowledge, in every detail of his or her life. He also understood that just as the universe itself was an evolution, so was the consciousness that imbued it, which was known as Brahman, the light within the light, or the sun behind the sun. The individualized spark of consciousness within each apparently separate body, known as Atma, was therefore not separate from the universal consciousness that permeated the universes as a whole. Once this knowledge was gained, the yogi was able to transcend the boundaries of time and space, even the limitations of matter itself. His identity then was no longer held within the veil of illusion as a separate self, but joined as one with the universal self. This was the knowledge taught in secret to those who were willing to penetrate past the veils, a knowledge that the Buddha had gained after long struggle and had been teaching many. Ultimately, as consciousness evolved within bodies of matter, the body would become capable of mirroring perfectly the multi-dimensional expression of the Atma. This is a stage when a seeker becomes an adept and could truly understand that Atma and Brahman were the same, and that Creator and creation existed together as one. This was a secret that had been lost in the darkness of ages past and would be revealed again to all. In the turning of cycles, Chaitanath understood that there was another bodhisattva coming, whose task was to take this understanding further and to teach all men the truth of who they were. Chaitanath had been a guide for Prince Siddhartha, who had become a Buddha, and he awaited now the one prophesied as the Maitreya, whose task it was to prepare the world for another revelation of light. It was he who had appeared to Meghavahana all those months ago to prepare him for his task ahead. Chaitanya was therefore following the events in Palestine with interest. As a Nath yogi, he could simply merge consciousness with anyone he chose, or travel wherever needed in his subtle bodies. When necessary, he could even materialize elsewhere in a physical body of whatever shape and size he wished. These yogic abilities were a natural outcome of having merged his physical body with the body of light, and he had become acutely responsive to the multidimensional impressions of the infinite Atman, or soul. This time, he found himself guiding the path of a Vimana that carried the higher consciousness of the Atma, which should become incarnate as a Metheya. He understood that the next incarnation of the Exalted One would be in a time and place beyond the borders of India, in a land where the spirit of separation and strife was at its height, and that it was here that the message of compassion and liberation needed to be sowed next. It was his responsibility to see that this consciousness would be incarnated in the child body without getting mired in the stickiness of subconscious illusion or Maya. As he noticed the perfect synchronicity of the lamas and wise men arriving from the lands of the East, he smiled in satisfaction. The great plan was moving forward. Chapter 5, Birth. Every time a child is born, a great star emanates from the heart of the Mother Goddess and makes its way towards the newborn child. This Atma then incarnates to the extent that it is capable of penetrating through the astral veils of illusion. In most cases, the vibrational frequency of the physical body, along with the density of the emotional and mental bodies, acts as a subconscious filter, and the Atma only manages a partial incarnation. There is always then a sense of something lost or incomplete, a deep and hidden emptiness, and the newborn child grows up looking to fill this emptiness with all the wrong things in all the wrong places. In the Kali Yuga, an age where the power of light, has been diminished, this equates with attachments to the material world or to people, unrecognized longings for a forgotten love, leading to the attempt to carefully manipulate one's environment, lest some unknown test or situation may upset the balance. The spontaneous joy and wonder of the unrestrained Atma does not last very long. In the case of the child Issa, his mother Amrita, or Maryam, as she was now being known in Palestine, had been conceived through the Shining Ones, which allowed Issa's physical body and nervous system to maintain a degree of subtle refinement into which the Atma could incarnate more fully, without getting clogged with the customary veils of forgetfulness. As it passed through the sticky fibers of the astral worlds. In fact, she herself, like many others in her lineage, had also been conceived by the angels, as true her sister Elizabeth, even though their mother Anna had been married at the time. Mariam had now entered a time of ritual preparation, when she ate only the most vital of foods and prepared herself through prayer, cleansing, and centered awareness to hold the highest frequency possible to support this incarnation. Her body was supple and her nervous system strong. The Shining Ones had continued to watch over her and support her mentally and emotionally for the task ahead. When the day of birth arrived, Mariam and Yusuf had created a temporary abode for themselves and the retinue in a humble little manger in Bethlehem. They had been informed that just as in the days of the prophet Musa, the current ruler of the province, Herodes the Great, responding to rumors that there would be a threat to his power from among the Yehudis, had begun massacring newborn male children. Here in this manger, they could remain for some time inconspicuously. And since as travelers through the land, they did not have to partake of the census imposed by Herodes upon the Yehudi tribes, they knew they were safe. With them was also was Yaakov, Yusuf's son from his former wife, Amita-praba, sister to Amita-praba, who had died in childbirth. And now the time had come. Mariam felt a strong power within her energy system that filled her body with ecstasy. It seemed to push and pull at the same time, and she felt a great cosmic energy joining with her own energy centers as the contractions of labor began. In the early hours of dawn, surrounded by attendants and accompanied by the braying of donkeys that shared the large stables with her, a boy child made his entry into the world. A few minutes later, to everyone's surprise, a twin child also emerged from her womb. Both looked alike, both light-skinned, as were many of the Beni Israel in the valleys of Kashmir who were of Tukharan descent, with hair the color of the harvest fields and eyes the color of the open skies. They named the firstborn Issa, after Ishvara, a Sanskrit term which represented the power of divinity. The second they named Tamas, which simply means twin. A great light seemed to fill the space as Mariam, Yusuf, and the other attendants gently and lovingly welcomed both children into their earthly bodies. Meanwhile, the lamas in the search party saw that the Vimana, which they had seen etherically hovering over the stables of Bethlehem, had dissolved in a great burst of light. They recognized that the moment had come and that the Atma of their Tulku had incarnated. Immediately they set forth from the outskirts of the city where they had been camped and wended their way towards the stables. They came in their traveling robes so as not to attract too much attention, which they removed as they entered, revealing beautiful and richly embroidered ceremonial garments. Gaspar bowed as he entered. We come from the Himalayan foothills and from the plains of Persia to honor you and the one we have sought. He spoke reverentially as he addressed Mariam. Balthazar, Sarain, and the Tibetan lamas followed suit, kneeling before the mother and her twin sons. Gaspar and Balthazar then rose and went up to Yusuf, or Megavahana, who had been standing off to one side. They embraced warmly with tears in their eyes, for Megavahana was younger brother to Gaspar, and therefore Balthazar's uncle. The travelers beheld the twins who had been born to Mariam. Both children were strong in the radiance of light, but their personalities were different. While Tamas slept peacefully in his mother's arms, Issa's eyes were already wide open and alert as he took in every detail of his surroundings, the etheric radiance emanating from each of them in the simple abode was enough validation that a great one had truly come again, as foretold. One of these beautiful children was surely the Tulku they had awaited these past 500 years. The travelers from the east left shortly afterwards so that Mariam could rest, but then returned the following day bearing gifts they had brought with them from afar. They brought gold that would help the Tulku's family through the first few years of their life, and they brought frankincense and myrrh, which they used to cleanse and purify the stables. They also brought with them certain family heirlooms, of which more will be shared later. They shared the story and the prophecies that had been given with Mariam and Yusuf. And Mariam reciprocated by sharing her own story of how she had conceived. Indeed, this is also what we have been told about the Buddha, the chief of the Lamas said excitedly. He explained the two stages of incarnation. In the first stage, the Atma descends to unite with the subtle bodies and anchors its frequency into the higher emotional and mental bodies. The yogis in the Hindu and Buddhist traditions of India had made it their practice to train the nerve cells, the nerve channels of their physical bodies to become strong and refined enough so they could then achieve the second stage of incarnation, allowing the impressions of the Atma in these higher bodies to penetrate into the lower emotional, mental, and physical bodies. In the case of a light conception, however, and we have many examples of this in our traditions, the Atma is able to enter through both stages of incarnation early in life, and so it remains awake without being lulled into the trance of forgetfulness that most of humanity must currently go through. The time is coming, he continued on, when this Kali Yuga will once more give way to a Satya Yuga, an age of light. In preparation for this, the subtle nervous systems of biological humanity will evolve to a point where all humans can directly incarnate the full power of the Atma. This is what the Shining Ones and the Bodhisattvas are trying to achieve. The Miteya we have sought is here to help prepare the way for this possibility. Gate, gate, paragate, parasangate, bodhi swaha. We are journeying beyond and beyond the beyond, and even beyond any borders of the beyond, into the ultimate liberation of embodied consciousness. All right, so let's sit with that for a while. And we'll be back again next week to continue with this journey. It's an honor to share this time with you all. And I look forward to being in touch. You can always contact me, share your own experiences, stories, questions. My email is kiara@eternaldoorway.com. And I think you can also reach me through Conscious Awakening Network. So blessings, dear friends, and may peace be with you always.